Hey, friends. Welcome to Dishing on Divorce, the Tuesday edition. We are on WGSN-DB, Going Solo Network Radio, Podcasts, and TV. I'm your host, CEO and founder of LZL Coaching, a boutique coaching firm focused on divorce, relationships, and life transitions. I'm also a divorced mom of three now grown kids among many of my other life experiences that I've collected along the way. My goal with this show is to share the power of divorce coaching with people like you who need it most. People who are going through divorce, thinking about divorce, or just finished with their divorce process and they're wondering how are they going to navigate life as an unmarried person. Divorce coaching is a relatively new addition to the divorce professional landscape, and it's a game changer. As your divorce coach, I'm like your primary care physician. I look at the whole person and I help you discover where you need the support first, who you need to find to get the right support, and how you can remember who you are, rediscover your own strength, and make the decisions that are right for you. You, not your neighbor, not your sister, and not your friend, but you. Your situation is unique and has unique needs. You're the expert in your life, and I help you remember that when you're feeling like you're the most lost in this process. Maybe the hardest issue to deal with in divorce is the fear over the question, where am I going to live? What about the house? When you're going through divorce, very often, all you can think about is what's changing and how difficult change is for you, your ex, but especially your kids. You feel like you have to keep as much the same as possible because somehow that's in the best interest of the family, but sometimes it's not. Today's guest, Michael Klein, is a certified divorced real estate professional, a CDRE. He knows the ins and outs and the particularities of home sales when it comes to divorce. Welcome, Michael Klein.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. But before I begin the exciting part of the show, the interview, I want to let my audience know that you're listening and watching the new streaming network, home of Going Solo Media and WGSN-DB, Going Solo Network Radio, Podcasts, and TV. You can find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Roku TV, and wherever you stream your shows and podcasts. Now, let's get to the interview. Michael, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this business of divorce real estate.
So I've been in business now selling real estate for 22 years. I've done a few transactions. I've represented 1,500 sellers and buyers. Although most real estate agents primarily work with buyers, I'm of the reversed. I've worked with over 1,000 sellers in my
Mhm.
career. How I got into it, I am divorced myself. But I think when I got into it, like every business person, you're looking to expand potential areas where you might get business. And I actually was originally trying to get into the probate arena, and I wasn't having much success. And I said, wait a minute, I'm in a younger area. There's more people here that get divorced than are passing away. And I started talking to attorneys that deal in family law and sponsoring events, CLE credits, et cetera, et cetera. And that's really how I got into it about 9 years ago.
Great. So what I heard you say that's really interesting and is so useful in coaching is you tried one thing, you thought that probate was maybe an area where you could find some business, and it didn't turn out that way, so you pivoted.
Correct.
And you noticed that in the community where you lived, there were more younger people who were going through a different life transition. So, talking in that community, trying new things, asking more questions is what led you to this field.
Yeah. It's interesting. I've always kept in my mind this little analogy that when you're driving a car, there's a reason why the rear view mirror is so much smaller than the windshield. So to
Hmm.
me, I'm always trying to look forward and say, how can I better myself? How can I help the people around me? And just find your new path.
Yeah. And recognize that there are so many things in the windshield that you're not focusing on. But maybe if you looked a little to the left or a little to the right, you could see exactly that thing that you need at that moment.
Exactly.
Exactly. Okay, so that's a little coaching that just sort of like rose up to the top here. Um, so let me ask you the real question here, which is what is a certified divorced real estate professional? What
It,
is
it's
that certification?
It's a
Yeah.
fantastic question. A certified divorce real estate expert, or known as a CDRE, it's an emerging expert in the field of family law who is specifically trained to support the family, support real estate needs during a case. Um, we do a few different things. Education to the attorneys. Attorneys are great, but I don't think anybody in any field could be a specialist at anything. And the real estate world is always, always changing. Different laws or different things going on in a market based on cycles, trends, et cetera, et cetera. Resources. I have a lot of attorneys that call me all the time just to run a case by me because maybe something slightly different is happening. And they would ask, for example, if they were to sell the home, how would you deal with this issue? Or what would you need to deal with this issue? And the third, as I said, really is specializing in divorce listings. Selling a home during a divorce is, I can't even say how different it is compared to selling a home regular. There's things that come up, such as, are we going to allow showings? If there's an in spouse, meaning one person living in the house, if they really don't want to move, are they going to keep the house a mess? Are they going to allow the pets to use the home as a restroom? Are they going to walk around the buyers and explain all the problems with the house that might not really exist? And I can go on and on and on. So it's really learning how to manage expectations. But I think at the end, the whole thing gets grouped into one thing. You have to learn to become an expert at neutrality. And you have to be able to realize that my goal is to help both of them get back to their individual happy lands where they both deserve to be. They were there at one point when they got married. And my goal is to help them get there and to do it as smoothly as possible, not favor either one of them, and get the most value out of the property for the entire family.
So that's a really wonderful thing that you're doing for the family. And I hear so much in there about a party that doesn't want to leave and when
Yeah,
you're called in, because that's got to be so challenging when one party doesn't want to leave and is fighting the sale when they are living in the house.
sure.
You know, how can that possibly work? And how do you even get showings when the person won't leave the house?
It does become complicated. There's different ways that I get on cases. Of course, sometimes people just find me and they call
Mhm.
me on their own without counsel. Sometimes counsel refers me to them and they both agree, okay, we don't know him. We're both going to use a person that we don't know. Uh, Sometimes it comes from a mediation, could come from a collaborative law. I would say, unfortunately, the worser cases are the ones that come from the court. So judges do really not want to court order a realtor to sell their home. They really would prefer, even though the couple is fighting, they prefer them to be able to come to a conclusion and at least select somebody. But if it just gets out of control and they're making no progress, I will wind up in the divorce agreement. And depending on the orders that the judge puts in there, depends on how much, and I don't hate to use this word, but power I have or influence.
Mhm.
So, and that's where it even comes in with talking to the attorneys. And again, if I could just give a slight example, when I started this, it was very common to get a court order that would say, if one party doesn't sign the listing agreement within 72 hours, the other party has the automatic right to sign the listing agreement on their behalf. So I've said to the attorneys, did anybody think while you're doing this to further that order and make sure it says, if the one party doesn't sign the contract or doesn't sign the final deed when we have a buyer in place, the other one has automatic power. Because if you don't have the right orders in place, we could lose a buyer while we're forced to go to court to ask the judge to enforce an order. So my job is to help push things forward and help it run as smoothly as possible.
That's really incredible because where you come in is so far along in the process. And in my role, I really work with my clients so that they never get to a space where they would need your most, and I'm going to use this word, intrusive role,
Yeah.
right? Where you are forced on a couple by virtue of a court order. My role as coach is to get these people into mediation so that they can resolve this as amicably as possible.
Yeah.
And
And
in that case, I still can see myself wanting to refer them to you to sell the house, because even when it's amicable, to have someone who is as knowledgeable as you would be beneficial to them. So tell me about that case. What would that look like for you?
so obviously, first of all, besides doing real estate sales for divorcing couples, I have a regular, what I'll call a regular real estate business. So whether they're going through a heated dispute and they can't get anything solved and the judge appoints, whether they're amicable and they agree with me, or whether it's just a normal family just selling their home and upgrading, I'm here to help everybody out. But I think one of the biggest obstacles that I see in this field, and I'm not blaming the attorneys, I'm not blaming the couple going through the divorce, is is the fighting and the lack of trust. So
Mhm,
what's interesting is in this field, it seems that if one party was to suggest me, the other party automatically wants to deny me.
mhm,
Now, if you look at your normal divorce, your accountant, your attorney, um, private investigators, all these people typically work for one side. Myself and the appraiser are probably the only two people involved in their divorce who are neutral. We're not here to fight for a party. We're here to fight for the value of a property and to get the best. So, what I've been trying to work with counsel with is to understand that the importance of the realtor or who is the realtor is not necessarily who suggests them. It's more making sure that they're qualified.
so tell me what that means. How would I share that kind of information with the client in a way to encourage collaboration rather than fighting?
Well, to me, to start with, when you're choosing a realtor, I think when you're choosing any professional in life, your lawyer, your doctor, your coach, etc., you want to understand people's backgrounds. You want to make sure that you're hiring somebody that has the experience to accomplish your goal.
Mhm,
You know, you don't hire the pediatrician for heart surgery, even though they're both doctors. So in real estate, what I always try and explain to clients is that if you're going to hire somebody to sell a home, the number one important question: how many homes have you sold representing the seller?
mhm,
So just because Mary might have sold you a home 3 years ago, to look up and find out that Mary's represented 6 sellers in her career, how would that give you the confidence as potentially compared to someone like myself that's represented over 1,000 sellers? Who do I think has the proper skills to see me through for negotiation of the best terms, especially during turmoil?
mhm.
So that's number one. Um, when it comes to becoming a CDRE, it's not an easy course to get. The Alumni Institute screens people. And unless you have a certain amount of sales, unless you have a certain amount of experience, they won't even allow you to take their class. And then we have continuing education. We do Zoom meetings every single week. So we're always looking to expand our knowledge to help, again, not only the clients, but help the legal community out. So again, I just think it's very, very important to make sure that you realize that a person without experience won't know how to deal with when one person doesn't allow showings, when one person, you have two different people and one wants to start the property at one value and the other wants to start at $50,000 higher. What is their position, or how do they deal with no showings? How do they deal with if one wants a lockbox and one doesn't? So there is a lot more that goes into it than just, hey, sell my house, and at the end of the day, let's just put it online. If it happens to become court ordered, it's even more different. And I remember when I started in this field, the first judge that I was doing work with, I actually asked her if I emailed her too much. And she said, no, you have no idea how useful you are. Prior to finding yourself, if there was a property on the market and there was a ready, willing, and able buyer at a good value to accept it, and one party doesn't want it, the only thing that would happen is the attorney would file an emergent order with the court. And by the time it got in front of the judge 1, 2, or 3 weeks later, the buyer was gone.
Yeah.
Since I'm hired by the court, I have a quicker line or quicker path.
Right.
And I could just email the judge's chambers that I have a problem with the case and I need to speak to the judge. And sometimes the judge is like, no problem, I'll take care of it tomorrow. Or she'll get a phone call and I'll be on the phone with the judge and both attorneys trying to resolve the problem. So the house sells.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty impressive because it takes a long time to get in front of a judge.
Yeah.
To get a hearing on a motion or an order takes much longer than you would anticipate. So the fact that you have that inside track is quite impressive.
If I can add one other thing that becomes important in many of these cases, the family potentially doesn't have good funds, or one party's afraid to lay out money that they're not going to get their half back. So some houses need a little bit of work before we go to market. Some houses go through inspections and have something come up that the buyer will not accept, even if you give them a credit. They want it fixed.
Right.
One of the things that I've always offered, and both the legal field and the judges all think I'm a little bit crazy, but I will actually front the funds for these repairs, and I charge them no interest. I get paid off the top at closing, and I get everybody to sign a document that everybody's aware of it. And again, it's just trying to help them down a path and get through things themselves instead of fighting about who's going to pay for things. I'm like, don't worry about it. I got it. You guys will pay me back later. And it's just my way of giving back to the people who are going through this life change and helping them, like I said, get back to their new rainbow.
That's pretty amazing. We need to take a little break right now, but the idea that you're leaving us with on as we go to commercial break, that you're willing to step in at a moment when clients have the greatest fear, the fear that they've got to sell this place that has been home, the fear that they don't have the money to get it in the shape to sell it, or the relief that they don't have the money to get it in the shape to sell it because they don't really want to sell it, but they can't get out of their responsibility now, helps people stand for themselves.
Yeah.
And that's something that people don't have that opportunity for so much when they're going through divorce.
Yeah, agreed.
So that's a gift. So let's leave on that note. And Michael, if people need to sign off now, can you give them information on how to get in touch with you? And we'll be back with more, but just before we leave.
They can either reach me in the office at 201-659-1143, or I can be reached by email at michael@mkgroupproperties.com.
Great. And with that, we'll be back. And we're back. Welcome back to Dishing on Divorce. And I am here with Michael Klein, a CDRE, a certified divorced real estate expert. What we just learned was that Michael offers to front the money when a house needs repairs and the couple can't come up with those funds, which relieves some of the pressure that's involved in getting a house ready for sale. And when people are struggling in that moment of change and transition and transformation and don't want to move forward, they're stuck, but they're stuck because they can't take those steps. Michael is the person who can help them, give them that extra value that they're not going to get from a regular run of the mill real estate professional, even an expert regular run of the mill real estate professional, because they're not thinking about all of these other divorce related issues. So thank you for that, Michael. Tell us a little bit more about what distinguishes a divorce sale from a regular sale.
Before I do that, I just want to give you one other example about the money. I
Okay.
actually had a client earlier this year who came to me embarrassed because we got him into contract. And he said, Michael, I have no money to move. I don't have money for security deposit. I don't have anything. But of course, I'm involved with his sale. So I knew what he was netting. I had him sign a piece of paper and I FedExed him a $10,000 check so he could secure his apartment to move a month later. And I
Wow.
knew I would just get paid off the top. And his attorneys were so grateful for it also.
It's really powerful
Yeah.
because no one understands the stress of having to live a different life and having that fear and not feeling like you don't have any support behind you. So the fact that you as a real estate and you're not the person most people would ask for help from, right? When I say not the person, you don't sit in the role that most people think they would
Yeah.
be able to ask for that support.
Yeah. But what's interesting is some of my cases, one of the clients is pro se with no attorney, and they wind up asking me questions. And of course, I always tell them I'm not an attorney, but this is from my experience. And some of them say, "Wow, you're like half realtor and half psychiatrist." And I'm
Yeah,
like, "Yeah, I get that sometimes, but talking people off the wall of you're fighting over $5,000, which is if you're split at 50-50 is 2,500, and you're going to spend more money fighting, paying legal fees than the $2,500 that we're arguing over." So I do try and help cushion and comfort them and take away the emotional problems that they're going through. And just, again, I always like to describe it as help them get back to their rainbow.
yeah, yeah, that's amazing. Um, so do you offer similar services when you're in a regular house sale?
I have. I have. I had a client 2 years ago who, again, he had the problems of he didn't have money to secure to move. And I think in his case, he needed money to pay for the moving company, security, first month's rent, and we fronted him about 15 or $16,000, and just I got paid back when the home was closed. So
So you know that there is a pot at the end of the rainbow,
yeah,
and that some of that pot will go to you
that's awesome.
because it's coming. So you can do that advance.
Yeah,
But it's something that when when you're living in fear because you have a scarcity mindset, you can't see that. The client can't see that.
no,
So there has to be someone who sort of opens that window for the client so they can open their eyes to the possibility of where they might have abundance. And that's a gift. So,
thank you.
yeah, absolutely. So, let me ask you, what training do you have in handling high conflict family law cases? I mean, you do this, but do you have like a specific training for it? Did that come from your real estate training with the alumni?
Alumni.
I know. I feel like it's the Illuminati. It's like a special
Alum-
training.
Oh yeah, alumni has a very extensive training, which is over a number of months, and some of the educators are attorneys, mortgage people. The person who actually runs the organization has been doing this for quite a number of years herself, and she'll probably do 40 or 50 cases a year still representing these. So a lot of it's through experience. Prior to me finding alumni to further my education, I was more of a feel my way, and I just started sponsoring a lot of events. And you know, unlike a lot of people that sponsor events and they sit outside, I've always sat in the room and I listen to what the attorneys and the judges are saying, so I can absorb and understand what people are going through and how I can relate what they're going through and what I need to do in real estate to help them through this.
Yeah. I mean, it's really important to not only talk, but to listen and ask questions
Yeah, it's
because
probably the biggest downfall of most of us is not listening. We learn more from listening than talking.
yeah, yeah. And that's like a skill that takes a lot of practice. So often we we don't listen for comprehension. We listen so that we can know when to break in for our next comment.
Agreed.
Yeah. And it's so important. And even in my work with my clients, when I listen to their story, I need to hear what they're saying underneath the words because so much of the story is about what's been running in their head, but it might not even be about what happened yesterday. It might be about what they told me 2 months ago.
Right.
It's still that story.
And I'm sure you're also probably looking for, if they had 10 things that came up when they're talking to you, you might be able to pull out the one that solves 8 problems.
Yeah,
As opposed, if you pull out the wrong one, you only solve one problem.
right,
So how do we help them get from where they are to where they want to be as comfortable and easily as possible?
right, right. So what if a client is so thrilled with the support you've given them in the sale part, they want to use you on the buy side?
It's an interesting question. As a certified divorce real estate expert, we have a very strict code of ethics, first of all. So when I have a property listed for sale that is um, a divorce sale, I will not take a buyer to their home. Although I think I could probably remain neutral, our code of ethics says no, because how can I encourage somebody to accept an offer if I'm going to get double compensation, so to speak? So once their home is in contract and somebody asks me, then I'm willing to assist them.
Okay.
But during the process, I would have to refuse and I would tell them I could refer them to somebody. But again, if how can I help somebody go buy a home and I'm selling the home and I know that they can't buy that home until we sell the current one? I It could be construed that you don't have neutrality any further. And
Right.
we are very, 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 very strong on the thoughts of neutrality and people feeling, I don't want to say feeling, believing that we are truly neutral in there just to help sell
Yeah.
the home.
It's really essential. Like you need to do one before you can do the other
Yes.
because you feel pressure to sell if you need to sell in order to buy.
Yep.
So, and these days it's really hard to have a, a clause in a buying contract that says that this sale is contingent on the sale of my other house.
I would say it's not hard. I would say it's about 101% impossible in today's
Yeah.
market.
Yeah. In today's
So
market.
so a lot of the parties that I deal with are going into a rental in the interim.
Hmm.
But even that, to protect them, most people think, oh, we're going to have an accepted offer. We'll close in 45 days. When I'm dealing with a divorce sale, I always tell the realtor with the buyer that we can schedule the closing 45 days after they produce their mortgage commitment, because I don't want the couple who's exiting the home or the person exiting the home to go sign a lease and then, God forbid, 3 weeks later the person gets denied a mortgage, and now they forget about the debt that they have and the legal fees they have. Now they're paying for 2 homes.
Yeah.
So I always ask them, and most people say that would be wonderful if I can delay the closing and schedule the closing based on a commitment.
Yeah, that seems really reasonable, and it really protects everybody because the buyer is gonna lose their deposit if the contract falls through.
Yeah.
So that's pretty heavy duty also. So, that seems to make sense. What else do you think that our audience needs to know about your field? And I'm sure there are people who would want to hire a certified divorce real estate expert without the court, and even when they're having an amicable or mostly amicable divorce.
Yeah. So first of all, there's not a ton of us. Matter of fact, in the state of
Right?
New Jersey, I think there's three of us in the entire state of New
Wow.
Jersey. Um, and we exist in many states, not necessarily in all states. So if somebody listening is in another state and wants to find somebody that's a CDRE, I can assist them. Um, I myself cover a pretty vast area. My office is often my car.
Okay.
But what I've offered to, whether it's the client or even to the attorneys, just because they're getting divorced, I'm based in New Jersey, just because they're getting divorced here, they might own a home in Florida or California that needs to be sold. And I will assist them in finding the right realtor.
Mhm.
If it's in New Jersey, I generally travel almost an hour and a half time frame. So I cover a pretty big area. But let's just say, for example, somebody in Atlantic City was getting a divorce and it's over 2 hours from me. I will find a local realtor for them, and
Mhm.
yet I will still stay involved. They'll be my feet on the ground, and I'll be the one negotiating all the terms.
Got it.
So I try and help them as much as I can. I also always offer to counsel and to tell their clients, not everybody is selling the home, but there's questions. So I am available to answer questions. It doesn't always have to be compensation at the end of the day. To
That's
me,
good
I
to
just
know.
believe that if you're committed to help people, everything that you deserve will come back to you at some point. So yeah, if there's anybody out there that just has a generic real estate question, they're welcome to give me a call. I'm happy to chat with them about it.
That's great. That's really good to know. So for all of you out there whose big question is, what about the house? There are a lot of questions underneath, what about the house?
Yeah,
And Michael is the guy to call. So we're going to put his information up again. Um, 201 And his email is michael at mkgroupproperties.com. This has been really informative, especially since there are only three of you in New Jersey. And actually, there's only one you. You are unique. I have no doubt of that. After talking with you for just 33 minutes, I am sure that you fill a role that is necessary and you do it in a way that is really specific, intentional, designed to support regardless of the compensation.
yeah,
That you may have started looking for business in the Chancery Court, but you found your way to the world of divorce, and you know how much people going through this process need extra handholding.
absolutely.
And so you're there to do it. And we can only say thank you. And this has been a great talk.
No,
So
it's a pleasure. I appreciate you having me on. And if I could just end with words that I said earlier to your audience, please do yourself a favor and don't get hung up if the other side recommends a realtor, as long as it's not their friend. Just make sure the person's qualified. That's the most important aspect is the qualification, not who suggested the person. They're new. They should be neutral.
they should be neutral. And there's one other thing I know that you have. You have 12 questions
Yeah,
that you offer to people to uncover who's right for the job. And is this on your website or is it
it's
somewhere else?
not. It's not. I don't know if it's something that you could post. My website is actually in works. There is no website live at the moment.
Okay.
If people contact me, I'm happy to send it out. But some of the questions we covered. What is their qualifications, or how would you deal with this, or how would you deal if one spouse doesn't permit showings? How would you deal with so on and so forth? These are questions that you should be asking your realtor, or your attorney should be asking the realtor.
Yeah. And you can ask your attorney to reach out to Michael. If you feel like this is what you need to know, or you have questions about the realtor your spouse is suggesting, you can ask your attorney to reach out to Michael, and Michael will give these questions to make sure that the right questions are asked. So I think that that's really key. Sometimes we forget that we're allowed to ask questions,
Yeah.
and we're also allowed to say no. And no is a complete sentence. So don't forget that either. Um, so with all of that, I want to thank my guest, Michael Klein, a certified divorce real estate expert and all around great guy. And you are listening to Dishing on Divorce. I'm Lisa Lisser. You can find me at lzlcoaching.com. I'm here to help you walk through the challenging and disruptive world of divorce. And I will see you next week as we talk to another person involved in helping your divorce go more smoothly. You can find me again at lzlcoaching.com. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.